The ancients were about virtue, and the moderns are about freedom. We have a crisis of unemployment, and it's in the job of being a manly man. It isn't the presence of women, it's the presence of feminists. So, feminist women, they I think, have brought ill to men and to children and to themselves.
It is a rare privilege to interview one's heroes, and I'm especially honored to do so interviewing Harvey C. Mansfield on the occasion marking the establishment of the Harvey C. Mansfield Chair of Political Philosophy. Who is Harvey Mansfield? Harvey Mansfield has been honored so often that his retirement from Harvard just last year has felt less like an ending than a festival of gratitude. I count at least 4 such celebrations, so this is a 5th, though I'm sure there have been many more over the years. Few scholars have inspired such affection or such respect. The question is why? He's known for 3 things: his scholarship, his character, and his importance for America and for conservatism. He is that rare thing, the perfect gentleman scholar. While some academics float in abstractions or want to flee ordinary life, Harvey stands firmly rooted in our world, serving as a bridge between our ordinary experiences and the great minds who point us beyond them. Over 6 decades at Harvard, he taught political philosophy as a way of life and a living art. His 10 books and 4 translations trace the arc of modern politics, starting with statesmanship and party government on Burke and the establishment of political parties, The Spirit of Liberalism and Taming the Prince on liberalism and institutions, America's Constitutional Soul on the virtues sustaining our republic, and Manliness, his witty reflection on courage and confidence amid risk. His Machiavelli trilogy, Machiavelli's Virtue, Machiavelli's New Modes and Orders, and Machiavelli's Effectual Truth, and his translations of Machiavelli's Prince, Discourses, and also his translation with his late wife, Delba Winthrop, of Tocqueville's Democracy in America, display his mastery for both interpretation and the art of translation. His Tocqueville, A Very Short Introduction, is to my mind the finest concise account of Tocqueville's enduring wisdom, while, and I would recommend this to our students, A Student's Guide to Political Philosophy, published by ISI Press, offers newcomers a clear path into the great tradition he embodies. But there are 2 more books on the way. One is called The Rise and Fall of Rational Control, which is a distillation of his celebrated course on modern political philosophy at Harvard, and that will be published by Harvard University Press in January 2026. And a book on Harvard called How Harvard Went Wrong, which is a collection of his sharpest reflections on the university he served at for more than half a century, and that will be published by Encounter Books later next year. Professor Mansfield was and is perhaps Harvard's greatest conservative thinker, one who, unlike many of his colleagues, was unafraid to say so, even when it was deeply unfashionable. And for those who want to see him in action, I'll mention yet again, Ben made mention of this, his unbelievably brilliant film conversations with Bill Kristol on topics ranging from Trump to Tocqueville and Strauss and Woodhouse, and endless conversations. And they're really, really amazing and enduring. So we will turn to one now. I guess I'm Bill Kristol's surrogate tonight. It's big shoes to fill. But we're going to start, Harvey, with a question on free speech. So we are sometimes called a free speech, quote unquote, university. Should a university be dedicated to free speech as its highest principle? And what is the relationship of free speech to liberal education?
Good, thank you, Lauren. That's very good of you, a rather extravagant introduction, and I'm very grateful. I'd like to get this honor of a chair at the new and exciting university in Texas, at Austin, in Texas. I'll tell you this, It's a pleasure to receive this honor without having to be dead. But I'm old enough and close enough, you might say. All right, free speech, free expression, and academic freedom. I will talk about those three things in relation. Free speech has had, over the years from the Constitution, been degraded, especially, I think, since the 1930s or 1940s. Free speech means, let's talk about not just free, but also speech. Speech means what makes sense from you to me, or from me to you. We are social creatures, and we show that we associate with other human beings by speaking with them. And when we speak with them, we make sense, or we hope to make sense, using reasons. And the Greek word for speech is logos, as you see in anthropology, anthropos, man or human being, logi, the reason or speech about man. So speech and reason are connected at the highest level. But there are lower levels, and free speech has come to mean something less than giving reasons to other citizens and listening to them. It's now free expression. This happened in a Supreme Court case in the middle of World War II called West Virginia versus Barnett, which is called the flag salute case, in the course of which the Supreme Court interpreted a flag salute as a form of speech. Of course, you would say something, but it was the action of the salute that the court added to the notion of free speech. So free speech became free expression for this reason, that you could make a gesture or perform an action. Even you could burn the American flag, and that would be protected as free speech, because burning the flag could be said to make, you're trying to speak with that. So free speech came to mean free expression. And if you take a course in the First Amendment in a law school, it's generally known as a course on free expression. It started out that expression was a form of speech, and now it's become that speech is a form of expression. So this gives success and legitimacy to acts of protest that aren't intended to give reasons or make sense, but just to show off or to make an impression on you. So you express yourself in order to impress other people, instead of speaking to them directly and to make a point that they would listen to, understand, and agree with or not agree with. So that I think is what has happened with universities have come to mean protest speech. Protest speech is mostly on the left. Somehow conservatives don't protest. That's maybe a disadvantage, but they somehow can't bring themselves to do it. It's too much of a stoop. So this has affected universities quite a bit, to the point that protest speech comes to be the test of whether you have speech. And totally forget the value of speech. You can talk about speech at the minimum, where it barely makes sense. And you can talk about it, and that's what law schools talk about. And the law understands the free speech as what is protected in that way. Or you can talk about average free speech. And that's what social scientists do when they take surveys of averages. But I like to think of the value of the highest free speech, which is free speech trying to make sense to other people, both to your citizens and to those who might be thinking or thinkers. Thinkers are supposed to congregate in universities, and there they share in what's called academic freedom. You can see that the two are different and how they've clashed in recent years. Academic freedom is for the sake of truth. Do you have a motto here? I don't know. Harvard has a motto, veritas, truth. It's even in Latin, a foreign language. And you have to learn something. Yeah. But free speech in the Constitution is for attaining justice, letting others understand what you think and what you think would be wise, a wise way to run our great free country. So those are different, and especially if free speech takes the form of free expression, and free expression is protest speech, then protest speech can get in the way of academic freedom because it's intended to do so. It's intended to disrupt the regular proceedings of a university. So let this stand as an answer to the
That's very
question
helpful.
number one.
Okay. Onward to question number two. Speaking of speech and the giving of reasons, colleges and universities have recently actually adopted principles more often of institutional neutrality, of not speaking on the issues of the day or not speaking in general on anything controversial. And I'm curious what you think about that. Should universities be neutral? Should they adopt principles of institutional neutrality? On what should they be neutral?
There's a difference between the University of Chicago and Harvard. University of Chicago does have this neutrality thing. Harvard wanted to speak on the issues of the day. Our recently resigned president began her tenure by saying, I'm leaving the ivory tower in the past, and I'm moving to making the university a part of society. And when the October 7 massacre occurred in Israel, that atrocity, she dithered as to what should be done or said in that regard. She got called to Washington and was really humiliated by a Harvard graduate, a woman from upstate New York. And this showed what happens when you try to comment on everything. I do think that a university needs to comment on issues which directly affected education issues. Things like the Trump administration's new idea of a compact contract. They're even asking the opinion of universities. But on the whole, I think it's better not to enter into partisan dispute. And not maybe on the whole, not just on the whole, but absolutely stay out of partisan dispute. That's part of the ivory tower. An ivory tower towers over the rest of society. It has its base in that society. It needs that society to continue. But the conversations or the the reasoning that goes on in the university, in that ivory tower, are not at the level of partisan political advantage. So it looks on the same questions as politicians and citizens do, but at a higher, or maybe even a deeper, high and deep level. So this is something Tocqueville tells you at the end of his introduction in Democracy in America.
Shifting to Harvard for a moment, you mentioned Harvard earlier, and picking up in the title of your forthcoming book, what exactly went wrong with Harvard? Can it correct itself? Or is external reform, speaking of the Trump Compact, is that the only solution?
The title of the book, this is just a collection of articles on Harvard, is Where Harvard Went Wrong, and the subtitle is 50 Years of Commentary That Fell on Deaf Ears. So that's what I'm going to be retailing in April. So I think some mistakes were made.
And what were they?
So I said,
What went wrong?
well, what mainly went wrong is that they adopted a policy of what they called diversity that wasn't diversity in the most important thing, which is diversity of opinion, or viewpoint diversity, as the phrase goes. And so they allowed a university to develop or degrade itself into a monolith of opinion where 95% of the professors and almost that many of the students, and much more than that many in the administration, were liberals or on the left. So, and putting themselves in a position where they had nothing to say and nothing really to hear from half of the country. So this is carrying the ivory. You can say that's an ivory tower, but it isn't, because it's this a monolithic opinion which doesn't know how to listen to the other side, in which the notion of the other side doesn't appear. And this happened partly because of affirmative action, where appointments were made for the sake of race and sex, and not so much for merit, such that if you were going to appoint a woman because she was a woman, it would necessarily have to be a feminist woman, not a conservative woman that you appointed. You had to appoint somebody who favored affirmative action in order to make it affirmative. So conservative women were excused from their task of being a woman, and we filled up with feminists, and the same thing happened in race as well. There are other factors too, but maybe that's enough to get you going.
And in 2006, you published a book challenging feminism with the unmistakable title of Manliness. Tell us, why did you write the book, and what did it argue? Have recent events confirmed your views, or they undermined or challenged them?
Yeah. That book was addressed to educated women. I said that on the first page. It didn't get to very many of them. It was. It got a reception. It was reviewed everywhere, and usually by it was given to a feminist to review. So I had a lot of hostility. I learned to live with that.
And you were on Stephen Colbert's show.
On the Colbert Show, yeah, that was the height of it. Yeah. Anyway, so this was all in 2006. The manliness I understand as the quality of taking charge in a situation of risk, where others hold back or don't feel entitled or either entitled or capable of dealing with something. So manliness in that definition applies not to very many men. And I think it is, as a virtue, it's something that manly men use to reproach unmanly men. Not so much for women. Women are excused for being women. They have something positive about them, as distinguished from the feminist point of view, which tends to render women without a definition to hold to and follow and think about. So that's what I tried to do in that book. I didn't mean to discuss masculinity, although I do to some extent. Masculinity is what distinguishes all males, you could say, from women. And there are certain low qualities which are often described with the word toxic. and they are pretty toxic. A drunken husband is definitely a toxic masculine specimen. So, and there are levels, say, from masculinity to manliness. Gentle manliness might be a higher level, and then there's the highest level, which I called philosophic manliness, and I talked about that at the end of the book. And I also said at the end of the book that if we didn't respect men for being manly, at least to some degree, and of course with some skepticism too, they were going to feel unemployed. They were going to feel as if they have nothing really positive to inspire them and to reward them for being what they are. And I think that's happened. We have a crisis of unemployment, and it's in the job of being a manly man.
Shifting to contemporary politics a bit. As a top scholar of executive power and conservatism, let's focus a little bit on Donald Trump. Has he been a good president? What will his effect be on conservatism?
Yes, well, my opinion of Trump has risen. I voted for him, but I didn't particularly like him. He doesn't appeal to me as a human type. He's vulgar. He doesn't really know beautiful things, beautiful books, beautiful art, beautiful music. That's the appreciation of those things is what keeps you from being vulgar. And he's an aggressive and selfish egoist who is shameful, really, or shameless, that isn't good, if I can say this directly to the students, isn't good for the young to watch. But on the other hand, he's done some good things, and recently this triumph of the kind of partnership that he had with Prime Minister Netanyahu in Israel have produced really a new picture in the Middle East, where American diplomacy has not had much success for decades. Right now he's maneuvering over Ukraine in a way that one hopes will bring him to a similar resolution of the war there. So I think he's especially been good in foreign policy. I'm not a fan of tariffs, and I am a fan of regular, limited, but still welcoming immigration. So I have a mixed view of him, but as I say, he's done pretty well in foreign policy, especially by comparison to what preceded him.
shifting to political philosophy for a moment. Soon you'll be publishing another work on political philosophy, The Rise and Fall of Rational Control, which is on modern political philosophy. What is this thing, rational control, and why has it fallen?
Rational control begins with Machiavelli, in my view. This is a controversial opinion. In fact, this whole book is a bit controversial. Well, I got my reasons. Rational control means letting society be governed by reason rather than prejudice, tradition, or superstition. So I mean, rather than religion, rather than the way things have been, and rather than people who are prejudiced against other people. So it tries to set up merit. It's not the word that Machiavelli used. He spoke of virtue, virtu, kind of combination of courage and prudence, and criminality. Don't forget that. So, and rational control works not by teaching you to be reasonable, but by teaching you how to control, or your elites, how they can control and maneuver your irrationalities. So you can still be prejudiced, but rational control will make it so that it doesn't matter. And then Machiavelli began this. He didn't finish it. So he was followed in the 17th century by Hobbes and Locke. These are the people I take up in my book, who transformed his virtue into a notion of rights, individual rights, which we're all much more familiar with than we are with Machiavelli. Then came Rousseau, who challenged the whole aspect of rational control. He said that reason isn't something that you can take for granted. Reason is something that develops, something that the human race did not have at its beginning. We began as just complicated animals, and it was only over decades, or rather centuries, or millennia of encounters with other human beings that we began very slowly to reason. So reason is something historical and not something natural, not a given. And this means that obviously rational control is much thrown into confusion and doubt. And that's what happened first in Rousseau. Then the German idealists came along and tried to save reason. That's Kant and Hegel. And then, since Hegel tried to make a picture of world history that made sense of all history, abolishing the kind of chance event that historians usually specialize in. But that was not successful, and in the very next generation, he was attacked by Marx, who spoke of the historical necessity of capitalist exploitation, which destroys itself, leaving a new and utterly free form of society, which he called communism. And this was opposed as another form of fallen rational control by Nietzsche, who looked at history and said, we need to create. History is creating. Past creations have come to nothing, And he gave a definition of nihilism, which he thought humanity now faced. Nihilism says, nothing is true, everything is permitted. That's what he thought rational control had come to. He tried to work his way out of it with a notion of creativity, which has, to some extent, succeeded. We all like to be told we're creative, and though we aren't. Let's leave it at that.
Excellent. And because of that crisis of modern rationalism that you mentioned, following Leo Strauss, you seem to favor the ancients over the moderns, or at least that's my impression. But you've written just almost exclusively about the moderns. You have written some about the ancients, but mostly about the moderns. So the question is, what do you find so valuable in the moderns if the whole project has ended in a kind of collapse or crisis? And are there certain elements of human or political life that the moderns understood better than the ancients?
To speak in short terms, in short sentences, the ancients were about virtue, and the moderns are about freedom. So what the moderns learned and showed, you could say, to the ancients was how to run a big country, how to have a big country which is, because it's big, heterogeneous, full of people of different kinds and different ethnic origins and different opinions, different occupations, different weather, differences, and in which freedom seems to work better than virtue, because freedom has more flexibility to it, and virtue seems to be too demanding. But I would rather speak in the other direction of what the ancients can offer to the moderns. That's our situation. We are inevitably modern. We have a big country, and we believe in freedom, and we believe in individual rights. And that's not going to go away, and if it does go away, it won't go to something better. So, but we can learn a little bit to understand, appreciate virtue, moral virtue and intellectual virtue. You want to read Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. It has a lot in it. It tells you 11 virtues. This is what I used to do in my course. And if you want to pass the exam, you have to be able to name all 11. Don't ask me to do it now.
All right, coming down from the Olympian heights, I'll end with a question for our students and parents in the audience. So I want to close by asking you to offer them, the students and the parents of students, advice as they begin their careers. How should they make the most of their time here at UATX?
Oh, do what UATX does best, which is read the great books and study the best expressions of modern disciplines. You know, because of the heterogeneous character, the diversity of our country, I would say to a young person today, and either as parent or as professor, do something you can be proud of. Will it make you proud to do this? And that doesn't necessarily exclude sanitation engineers, if you want to call it that, because earning your living is something everyone can do to be proud of. Most of you will be proud of something better than janitors, but if you can see that it makes you a better person and makes you think and enjoy and socialize with other people. That's the kind of proud life which, in a kind of very general way, one might say to most any student here or elsewhere. Do something you can be proud of.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I'd like to thank you for that and open up to audience questions.
Thank you so much for coming here to speak today. I'm James. I'm a freshman here at UATX, and I was wondering, how do you create a diversity of opinion on campus, and where on campus is diversity of opinion important? Is it with students, faculty, staff, or a little bit of everywhere?
I'm not sure you have to create it. All you have to do is release it, because people do differ and they have different opinions and different reactions to the same thing. So, and I mean, obviously you can stand as a beacon that represents a certain opinion, as does this university, namely that the elite universities of privilege have lost their way and need to be reminded of what knowledge is and what academic freedom requires. So I can see that that students here would have that general outlook, but there are many different expressions of that, which if you just let them come out, they'll be there.
Hello, thank you for being here today. My name is Tony. I'm also a freshman here, and my question for you is someone who has already contributed so much to the education field and worked at like Harvard for 50 plus years. What inspires you to keep on going and to like do these things like tonight and come to speak to us on your free time?
Maybe it's just continued motion. I can't stop. Yes, you get old and you get tired, but you remember what you used to do, and it's a little bit of a reminiscence for me to come and do this kind of thing, and I'll probably keep trying until I fall on my face. Students are new. It's a great thing about being a professor, that you've always got new students. There's every fall, a new generation comes in, a new class, and there they are. They haven't heard about Plato yet. So let's get going with them, and then they leave after they've had 4 years of wonderful freedom. What a wonderful thing is to escape your family. That's and you don't really escape them, obviously, but you acquire the status of being able to meet with them on your terms and not their terms. So I don't want you to forget your parents, but it does mean you've lost the sort of the supervision of your parents, and you don't yet have a job. A job has requirements, and you have to show up and behave and perform and do your job, as Bill Belichick calls it. Yeah, do your job. So this is a wonderful time in your lives, and make the most of it.
Hi, my name is Lily Zuckerman. I'm a freshman here. So my question is, in light of your writing on manliness, to what extent would you attribute the decline of universities to the rising prevalence of women in the academy?
Zero. It isn't the presence of women, it's the presence of feminists. So, feminist women. They I think, have brought ill to men and to children and to themselves. And I would say that the worst thing, they've sort of revealed themselves by now finding that they have no definition of a woman. Simone de Beauvoir began by her famous book on the second sex that I think came out first in France in 1949 by saying that a woman doesn't have a natural definition. She has an historical one. So it's just over history that women have been forced, say, by outside powers, namely especially men, to be the way that they are. And they aren't, and now said we can abolish that, and women can be free to find their own definition. But they didn't she didn't offer any guide as to what that might be. And I think that failure has been fatal to feminism. We had this wonderful new black woman on the Supreme Court, Ketanji Jackson, said in answer to a question from a senator at her confirmation hearing, he said, what do you think a woman is? And she essentially refused to answer. She didn't have a definition. What has that led to? Transgender. So, transgender defines a woman or a man as having no definition. That's a kind of contradiction. So you need a book that's an answer to, but also maybe an imitation of my manliness book. There needs to be a good book on what women are.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Merrick. I'm a sophomore. I have a question about rational control, because in the classes in which I've studied here, Machiavelli and Hobbes and Locke, we've talked about each of them as if they each have their own justification for that rational control. And it sounded like you were saying rational control reason shouldn't really need a justification, or does it? And what is Machiavelli's as opposed to Hobbes's, which seems to be the sovereign, and Locke's, which seems to be the conscience? Is Machiavelli's just what's practical is reasonable?
Okay, you're a sophomore, so you want to know about rational control.
Yeah.
That's what you've learned. Yeah, you're second year. That's great. Well, yeah, I don't think there are different justifications so much as different ways or modes of maintaining it. The justification is what Francis Bacon spoke of, the relief of man's estate. That's a phrase what he did. And to the acquiring of power over all things. So it's to make us more powerful, and it's to relieve our estate. Notice, like a Christian, he speaks of the need for relief or repentance, but he has a very different answer as to how to get it. And how to get it is to make human beings more powerful. That is the beginning of modernity, and you see it in Machiavelli, and you also see it in AI today. And the purpose is to make us more powerful. My wife and I this morning had a ride in a Whammo.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Dylan Romer. I'm a freshman here. What is the greatest danger to a university dedicated to free speech, such as this one, and what is the role of the student in defending it?
But the greatest danger, perhaps, especially for a righteous university, is self-righteousness. Don't take yourself too seriously. And there are, you do have political opponents out there, but if they should happen to win the next election, this isn't going to be the death of you. So, but don't be, I said you should look for a job that makes you proud, feel proud, but don't be too proud. That needs to be added to. Pride, you deserve to feel proud in a university like this, which is taking on the opinions of all the elite universities. So I really approve of that, and I praise you for that. So do your best in presenting your case, but it's still a free country, and you can hope for the best, but you usually won't get it. You'll usually only get a part. Look at the way Americans have voted in the last half century. So about even one party and the other. That's not so bad. It means when you win an election, then you're slightly dimmed by the fact that there's another election coming in 4 or 2 years. And when you lose one, your consolation is it won't be forever. So that's, I think, a healthy way to look at politics, and a healthy thing to remember in your lives, and when thinking of other citizens and reacting with them.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alexandra, and I'm also a sophomore with a question about rational control. So in Machiavelli's discourses on Livy, he says only one time that the people are very difficult to trick, and they have this very unique source of wisdom. So when compared to rational control, as you say, it doesn't matter in this huge country if the people have different opinions. The prince will make that not effectual in the administrating of the country. How much should the prince heed the opinions of the people in the direction of government of the country?
How much should the prince play tricks on the people? Is that your question, or is it?
No, how much should the prince listen to the people?
Listen to the people as much as he has to, which isn't always very much. Sometimes the people can be astonished and impressed by sensational acts. Trump is rather good at this. He makes theatrical appearances and statements and especially deeds, bombing the capital of Iran, for example. Not the capital, but the nuclear energies of bomb preparations there. So in order to impress the people, you have to understand what impresses them. And it isn't always gratitude for benefits received. So if a prince gives you benefits and expects to get goodwill in return, it's likely that he'll be disappointed, because when you give people benefits, free benefits, they begin to think after a while that they're entitled to those benefits. And what is originally an act of generosity becomes a routine. So that if you give them a little bit less or skip a payment, you know, they actually get angry and accuse you of ingratitude. So it's best not to try to win people over with acts of benefaction, which you think will impress them. Much better to get them to sacrifice for you. And that's what Machiavelli tries to get his prince, or how he advises them. When people sacrifice for you, they think more of you rather than less. Why is it that parents love their children more than their children love parents? Because the parents have invested so much in their children. So you love them. And your children are a little more unsparing in their attitude. So you mustn't be that way, but it's what Machiavelli, I think, would advise you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Miles. I'm a freshman here. Today, we just finished reading Plato's Republic. We discussed book 9 and 10, and one of the biggest topics in the book that I noticed was a descent from democracy to tyranny in a political society. I was curious as to, do you believe enough in our democratic institutions in America to fully uphold a democracy until, I don't know, the end of time? Or do you think that we'll fall into the same traps that the people of the perfect society will, into falling into a state of fully loving desire, having pure chaos within a society, and looking towards one person to lead them as a tyrant?
Okay. The end of time, that's quite demanding. So, I would say probably we won't last to the end of time, and there will become a time when our fair country will disappear, and same as all other countries preceding ours have done. To be alive means also to face death, but not for a while. Let's not do that for a while. So yes, there is a kind of cycle of good and bad that Plato speaks of, but that's from a very high standpoint. From a citizen's standpoint, it's what can we do now? And it is a fact that our country and our Constitution makes it necessary and possible for each generation to face its own crisis. That we don't have a regime that can't change or that is inflexible. And we should take advantage of the play that it gives to different parties, new thoughts, new opinions. We must take advantage of those to keep sort of our balance on the balls of our feet. You know, when you're not when you're just standing tall and can't be pushed. So I think that's an advantage of our Constitution, that it forces, through elections, us to think about our self-government. Always, it's good now, or isn't so good now. And it can be better, or it could be worse. So thoughts like that, which tend us toward reform, but reform within our Constitution. Our Constitution is America's most precious common treasure. So that's something we must hold on to. I'll leave you with that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Recently, discussing Mansfield Park, no relation to you, I recalled a statement of yours. Tell me whether it's really yours. Most choices in life are second choices.
I can't recall saying that. That most choices.
Well, if you'd like it, take it.
Because you're talking to me in the presence of my wife.
Oh, I apologize. You've said a lot about academe, and I know you as our leader on the question of grade inflation.
Yeah.
And your famous declaration that you would now give 2 grades. You would tell the students what you really thought.
Yeah.
And then, without smiling, that you promised to raise it to the Harvard standard.
Yeah.
In what degree, you've mentioned diversity, and you've mentioned some other features. In your view of this, and I'll read your book, is there something to do with that innovation that seemed, why did we never think of this before, of student evaluations, anonymous, to replace the judgments? I have an essay that begins, if the word student evaluation had been heard any time before 1968 in the 1,000-year history, it would have meant what the teachers judged of the students. I'd be interested.
Well, you've touched on 2 of my favorite topics, grade inflation and course evaluations. Yeah, course evaluations, I was saying this earlier today, is the judgment of the unwise on the wise, or people who know less judging people who know more. And it is good to know student opinion, but you can know it pretty well without an anonymous declaration. And I think that's what's
But it's,
that would be best to
what it
best
seemed
do.
to me to substitute was the purpose. It was please the customer was the new spirit of this.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
yeah.
Right. It introduces the like sort of makes a student into a customer.
And the only place I ever heard it resisted for a while was Queens. Came in and they were saying, we go for this. But they had a leader who came back the next month at the faculty meeting and said, this is such a great idea. We can't limit it. When we put this in, we will have anonymous judgments of the administrators for their continuation in office.
All right.
And it kept it away for 6 years.
Yes. That would indeed be a good remedy.
Hi, thank you. It's great to be here with you. I would like to hear a little bit about Leo Strauss and how he shaped you.
Have I heard that name? Yes. All right. He was the most intelligent person I've ever met. And I think he's one of the giants, intellectual giants of the 20th century. I would put him together with Heidegger, his great opponent. I didn't go to the University of Chicago. It was kind of a mistake of mine to go to Harvard, which he excused me for. And when I got to know him, he liked to treat me with mock equality, because most of the people around him were his students at Chicago. And I was from Harvard, and I had my PhD, and this made me equal to him, supposedly. Anyway, so I got to know him insofar as one can know him, because knowing him would be knowing the things that he knew.
Didn't he say that he wished he'd written your book on Burke?
Yes, he told that to a friend of mine. Whether that might have been one of his most ironic statements. Yes, he was talking about my first book, which was on Burke, and he read it, and he told somebody else, not me, that he wished he'd written that. But I think that was youthful enthusiasm, which he was adopting for the day and the event. I don't know. Yes, it is true. I have that in my recollection.
All right, well, let's join me in thanking Professor Mansfield.